in past cultures and even other areas in the world, they know that it takes a village to, raise a child and to have community when we're parents. They appreciate that. Yeah. And for some reason, we see it as a sign of weakness, when in reality, it's a sign of strength because we have to have it. Otherwise, we suffer the consequences of not having it.
We want to empower you to make fully informed choices about your pregnancy and parenting options. Let's talk about what's next now that pregnancy has entered the chat. All right, welcome back to the Pregnancy Has Entered the Chat podcast. We are so excited to have Jessica on today. So Jessica, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do, and just anything else you'd like to share.
Well, I'm excited today. And my name is Jessica Hatton. I am a licensed counselor here in North Carolina. They changed our title a couple years ago, so it's Licensed Clinical Mental Health Counselor, which is a mouthful. So I'll just say I'm a licensed counselor. I own a practice called Christian Mom Counseling. So I work with women of all ages, essentially, primarily mothers, and really just see them through teletherapy right now, all across the state of North Carolina, and work with them from a Christian lens. So most of the women who reach out to me are coming in to work on themselves, to heal on their own, and then hopefully in turn become better mothers. And we do that just through the lens of Christian counseling. And so I enjoy what I do, but I kind of came to that point because my husband and I have been married now, I would say, probably 17 years. I always get it wrong. That sounds terrible. Almost 17 years. And I've done counseling since we've been married, and I was, in school before that for counseling. I've kind of always had an idea of what I wanted to do after I got into college, but when I first got into counseling, I was working with hospice patients, and I loved it. I loved my patients. I loved their families, and it was just a lot of hard work. Took a lot of emotional toll. I would come home from work just crying sometimes because I just had so much empathy for my patients and their families. So at some point I just decided, I can't continue to do hospice forever, but I really still wanted to work with clients. So I went into private practice, and then I started working with teens and adolescents, which was not a huge jump because my husband was a student pastor at the time. So we had worked with students for as long as I could remember. So it was an easy jump to make, and I loved it. I loved working with my teenagers. I loved working with the kids. But I learned after several years of being in the field working with teenagers that many times parents would bring me their children or their teens and want me to fix them, say, fix my child. I don't know what else to do. And so I would do the best, of my ability to do that. But I almost found myself working over the course of time more with parents on the parenting end and trying to heal from that perspective because I really wanted to come out counseling from a proactive standpoint rather than a reactive. And so when I started Christian Mom Counseling, my goal became to help women not only heal from their own wounds, but to help them in parenting so that we can go about, this proactive standpoint of counseling and heal families from the inside out. And so my goal is by helping women, I'm helping their children as well. And so that's what I do. And so my husband and I are married for 17 years, and then we have 3 little ones. 8, 6, and almost 4.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's so cool to hear how you went from hospice care to then adolescents and teens and then have found yourself really naturally fitting into the Christian mom counseling and starting from that proactive standpoint, like you said. I'm really, really excited to talk to you today about our topics. So we're talking today about mental health and loneliness. And so you already kind of talked about the ways you specialize for your counseling, but can you talk about how that plays a role and a factor in what you do and the conversations that you get to have with moms and with women of all ages?
Honestly, I think that loneliness in the mental health community in general is kind of an epidemic, I would say. And so I would say a majority of my counseling clients are struggling with some form of loneliness. And actually, I think the most recent study that I have found on it was actually Barna Research. I don't know if it's the most recent, but it's one of the most recent studies I've seen. And it said that across the United States, Americans, there's 31% who would say that they feel lonely on a daily basis.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's a huge percentage. And I don't know, honestly, if that was pre-COVID or after COVID, because that would probably make a huge difference as well. In just how we are interacting with others. But even just that statistic is huge. I mean, that's 1 in 3 people are struggling with loneliness every day. And the statistics get even higher if you say, are you struggling with it at least on a weekly basis? That's at least half of all Americans. And so the epidemic is out there, and I think we're all struggling with it on some level, but then it's only amplified when we are mothers because we're caregivers, whether that's caregivers full-time at home or caregivers in the workforce. And so there's a lot of pressure on us, or we feel that there is, to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And so meeting our own needs and keeping community close is always a struggle.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that are listening are probably thinking, yes, that's exactly how I feel. Or, man, that's so comforting. It's really sad, but also comforting that I'm not alone even in feeling alone.
Yes.
So I'm sure there's women who are listening and thinking, okay, that's really good to know that I'm not alone. Totally cool to understand that, okay, someone understands what it's like to feel like the caregiver, whether I'm at home or at work all the time. So something we say a lot here at the Pregnancy Network when women come in to see us is, you're not alone. Those words have so much power when our situations make us feel super alone. So a couple reasons that women who come to see us feel alone are unsupportive partners for their pregnancies, lack of community, as you mentioned, keeping that community close, lack of resources to care for themselves or their children. So how can women process through loneliness and the emotions surrounding an unplanned pregnancy?
That's a really good question. So I would say, processing emotion doesn't necessarily have to include another person. And so one of the best forms of communication you can do is, I know it sounds kind of silly, but I would say talk out loud. And so there's something very cathartic about speaking out loud and the things that we're feeling, because it gives them power and validity if we are able to speak them out loud. So I tell my clients all the time, speak what you're feeling, even if there's not someone there to actually listen to it. And the same goes for writing. Writing, I'm going to get a little dorky on you.
No, I love it.
Writing is one of the very few forms of work that we can do that incorporates both hemispheres of the brain. And so I love encouraging people. Now, when I say writing, I mean that actually pen to paper.
Okay.
So when people are writing, they are utilizing both the linear part of the brain, the logical and the linguistic, the language, as well as the creative and the emotional expression. And sometimes by utilizing both halves, it really brings together a sense of wholeness and completeness. So being able to write and process what we're feeling, even if you don't even know where to start. I mean, just start by saying this is how I feel, and then just listing emotions possibly. All of those things can help. But I would say, if you absolutely need someone, utilizing the resources that you do have. And I think that might even be just brainstorming, who in my life can I have this chat with or this talk with? Who is actually going to listen to me? And it might be a coworker, it might be a professor, it might be your mom, it might be a sibling. I think that sometimes we have to exhaust resources to figure out who can I trust to hold my emotions, and to listen and to validate. And so reaching out to people that we know are safe and that we can trust, and then having those conversations.
Yeah, that's so awesome to think about the different options that we do have to process alone or to process with someone that we know cares about us. I'm sure that those practices are things where we kind of would those pop into our head, but they feel kind of silly sometimes, talking out loud to yourself or journaling, sometimes it's hard to discipline yourself to be like, okay, no, I'm going to sit and think through this. But that's a really encouraging thing to share.
Neither of those things are things that you have to do on a daily basis in order to process emotion. You know, I think sometimes people, when I say I want you to start journaling, they think, well, I can't make that a habit. Like, I struggle to do it on a daily basis. And I'm not telling you to do it on a daily basis, but if you just feel like you need to work something out, then, you know, grab a piece of pen and paper and go to town. Like, it's a good place to start.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then talking about resources for who can you turn to when you do need to talk to someone? Something that we offer here at the Pregnancy Network is the Connect program. And so we connect women who come to see us with women from local churches who are there to be a support system. And so that is a really awesome resource of, you know, that person's a phone call or a text away, and that you can talk to them about pregnancy, motherhood, all of the things that come along with a planned or an unplanned pregnancy. So if you're local to the Triad, check that out. We really love offering the Connect program to our clients. So something about loneliness is it's not a new problem, but as you mentioned, it does seem to kind of be heightening from the pandemic, and then also just the culture that we live in. It's very easy to isolate ourselves. So what are some practical ways that we can fight loneliness in our own life?
I'm gonna go back for 1 second, because you were saying it's the many reasons why it has become an issue, and I think that this is going to eventually answer your question.
Yeah, no worries.
But I think that in the recent decades, our culture has grown into thinking that, or having this misconception that we have to be independent in everything we do, and so it's a very individualized culture. But it didn't used to be that way. It used to be very dependent on family and friends and our networks, our communities, our tribes. And I think research is showing that people have a capacity for around 50 people.
Okay.
Like, that's our top capacity. And that is not Instagram. That's not Facebook. Like, that's our capacity for person to person.
Yeah.
But within that, we have a very close circle of somewhere between like 3 to 5 people that we truly count on. Maybe a little bit more than that, but like, it's a very small circle compared to the, you know, big tribe that we have.
Yeah.
And so people in past cultures and even other areas in the world, like, they utilize those people, and they know that it takes a village to, you know, raise a child and to have community when we're parents. They appreciate that.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we see it as a sign of weakness, when in reality, it's a sign of strength, because we have to have it. Otherwise, we suffer the consequences of not having it. And so all that to say, I think there's a lot that goes into this epidemic, whether it's cultural, generational, who knows? It's just, you know, something we're all struggling with.
Yeah.
And so the question was like how to go about combating it. I would say start by making a list of the people in your life that are safe, that you can trust, and that the people around you that will, I guess, hold you accountable and encourage you.
Yeah.
And making sure those people are safe, I think, is always one of the best things that you can do.
Yes.
Because you have to have healthy relationships to stay healthy yourself. But yeah, start by just making a list of those people in your life, and then figuring out what role they might play in helping you along the way. Because different friends might provide different services, or provide like meeting our needs in different ways.
Yeah.
You might have one friend who's able to hold you accountable. You might have another who's the life of the party and just like encourage you to go out to the movies with them, you know, have fun. Hey, let's go out to dinner. And then you might have one that's just going to always be, you know, on your side, the encourager, saying, hey, I got your back no matter what.
Yeah.
And then another who's like, hey, I'm here to help babysit. You call me up, I'll be there.
Yeah.
And you can go out and do your thing for a little bit. So different friends can meet different needs. And so figuring out like how people can help in various ways without relying solely on one person to carry everything.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love hearing you say that, like, the tribe that we surround ourselves with is so important. And like every person has different strengths and different ways that they can, what things they can bring to the table in friendships, and making sure that you do have those healthy relationships that you can lean on and that they can lean on you. And I just think that's a really beautiful idea. And also that you said asking for help is a sign of strength rather than weakness, because I think we get it in our heads that it's the opposite a lot. So I think that that's hopefully someone listening is breathing a sigh of relief and saying, okay, I can ask for help. But something that came to my mind as you were talking was someone listening may be like, that's awesome. I don't have those safe people in my life. I don't think I have many healthy relationships or friendships. Where is a good place to turn? Or what are some ways that people can go about building healthier relationships, and maybe even ending some relationships or friendships that are no longer serving them?
That's a really good question. So I would first start with just local resources. So the Pregnancy Network is a huge opportunity to, provide multiple services. And what was it, the Connector?
The Connect program.
Connect program. I think that sounds like a great place to start. Other places would be just honestly starting, with government agencies would be great, because sometimes you don't even realize like what's offered in your local communities. Support groups are great. And I recommend support groups. Actually, we're seeing a growing number of people utilizing support groups as opposed to sometimes even individual counseling, because they can see that they're not alone in their struggles, and they can grow from hearing other people talk about how they're, working through theirs as well. So there's online support groups, there's in-person support groups that you can join, and whether it's pregnancy support groups or after you've had the baby, you can do like new mom support groups. Play dates are also a great place to start if you've already had the baby. And sometimes those are more for moms than they are for kids, to be honest. I mean, kids can crawl around in the floor wherever they are. But I mean, they're really for moms, and it teaches us how to interact after having children, because it's completely different. Completely different. There's a lot of interruptions.
I'm sure.
A lot of them. And, so there's a lot of different areas, whether, especially even like your local churches. Like if you're already part of a local church, then getting involved in your church and figuring out, like, is there a small group that I can be a part of? Or is there a, group of women who are meeting, I can join in with a Bible study? Is there a list of babysitters? That's always a realistic option as well. So I think that there's always resources to find if we just start looking. But we have to figure out where those are.
No, that's super encouraging that there are all of those options. Like you said, government agencies, the Pregnancy Network, support groups. That's really awesome to hear that a lot more people are starting to utilize that as a resource. And then the local church is always an awesome resource for a community, whether it's attending on Sundays or, like you said, those smaller gatherings that happen throughout the week. So that is a great place to start. So something that some women who are listening may be struggling with is setting boundaries in more difficult relationships for them, whether that be a relationship with a partner or a friend. So how can someone go about maybe taking a step back or setting some of those boundaries in relationships that aren't healthy?
So I think that it's important for people to understand what boundaries are, because sometimes they're a little bit misinterpreted. And so boundaries are setting they're rules for protecting ourselves. And it's not out of selfishness or, for any... there's just not any selfishness there. It's all for protecting ourselves. And so one of the classic books is Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend. And I love their description, because in it they say that boundaries are kind of like a fence around a house. And so in that fence you have a gate, which is closed unless you want to open it to allow someone in. But you can always close the gate if you don't want to let somebody in. And so really seeing relationships and healthy boundaries as I can let in who I need and who is safe, because they're going to have an impact on me as well as my family. But I can also let out or keep closed the people that are not safe. And so that's really essentially how we see boundaries. And so I would say that if there's like forms of emotional abuse, whether that is, criticism all the time or someone telling you that you're not capable of doing something, those kind of relationships, I think that are probably pretty unhealthy. Any form of physical abuse, I absolutely say put your foot down, like that person is not allowed in your fence.
Yes.
And that may be, time to reach out to resources immediately if that's the case, not only for your protection, but for the protection of the child. So any form of physical abuse, and so I think that just keeping an awareness of what impact people are having on you and how they're affecting you, even when it comes down to like your mood throughout the day. And I'm not saying that every person has to agree with you 100%. We all need those friends who keep us accountable to growth. But if they are harming you in any way, then that is somebody that we need to let go of. And finding the healthy people in your life that will help you sometimes let go of those few toxic people is always helpful.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference to have someone saying, no, like you said, this isn't selfish, or no, this is actually good that you set this boundary. I think that can make a world of a difference to have that support. And I love that analogy that you mentioned of, we don't think anything of a fence around a house. It makes sense. The gate analogy is awesome. Like, you control who comes in and comes out because they're, if you want to take the analogy all the way, like, they're going to impact your house. They may get dirt on your floors. They may do whatever. So I do think that that's really encouraging. And I hope that people listening are encouraged by that and feel freed to set those boundaries for themselves.
And some of those boundaries might just be saying no. I can't do that this week, or no, I don't want to join in with that. Sometimes it might be, going to the extent of like changing your phone number. So it depends on what level you are with that person, your need to set certain boundaries. But different avenues can be considered, but don't be afraid to say no.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I think as women, sometimes we feel like no is a dirty word.
Yes.
So I think that that's super encouraging and super needed. Just, you can say no. It's okay. So what advice would you give someone who is still considering all of her options for her unplanned pregnancy?
I would say first and foremost, give it some time initially, because I think after shock begins to wear off, I think that there's a lot of different emotions that you're going to feel, but try not to make any decision with fear being your main reason. I think that if we're not careful, and this is across lifespan, fear can make us make decisions that, may or may not be the best. And so I hope that women make choices out of sound reasoning as opposed to just letting fear be a factor, whether that's fear of a stigma or fear that they can't do it, and just changing their view of how they go about living their life, because, and I'm going to use a quote that I found. So hold on, let me look up this quote real quick.
Go for it.
So this quote was by a guy named Kurt Thompson. He's a interpersonal neuroscientist, which is kind of a very rare expertise. So basically, he studies how brains interact with one another. So this interpersonal brain connection. And he says the places where we are most frightened are where the greatest resources for beauty, goodness are waiting for us. And I think that fear can kind of bring us back to this questioning of, where am I? What is happening? Who am I?
Yes.
And leave us kind of questioning, what the future is going to look like. And all of that is okay. So acknowledging it, but not allowing fear to take hold and make us make decisions. And so just coming to the point where you can say, okay, out of this, can there be goodness there? Could there be beauty there? And rethinking what the future could be, and recognizing that you can be fully equipped for whatever is at hand. So I think that would probably be my biggest piece of advice, is just try not to make any decisions out of fear, but allow yourself to rethink the possibility of what beauty and goodness are.
I love that quote. Could you read it one more time?
He said, "The places where we are most frightened are where the greatest resources for beauty and goodness are waiting for us."
Man, that is so awesome, because that is a huge thing that comes along with an unplanned pregnancy, is just fear.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting this. I don't know what the future looks like with this. And with some of the other factors that we've been talking about with, man, I feel alone in my relationship. I feel like I don't have a lot of support around me.
Yes.
So reimagining those possibilities of, okay, this is where I am now.
Yes.
But let me see where the future could take me if I see this as an opportunity for beauty and for growth and all of those things. I think that that's such a beautiful quote, and sounded like a very niche specialty that the guy had. So maybe we probably trust him.
He's very good at what he does.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that that is so encouraging, and hopefully encouraging for the people listening, that we can imagine new possibilities, even if they weren't what we were expecting them to be. So what are some ways that women can be proactive during their pregnancies in caring for themselves physically, mentally, and emotionally?
I would say, well, as far as physically, just, continuing to eat well. If you're not, then just trying to make that a little bit more of a priority. But then, movement is always great. And movement is not only good for our bodies, but it's good for our minds and our moods as well, which is really hard sometimes when we come home at the end of the day and we're like, I don't want to move. Yeah. All I want to do is crash on the couch. But the reality is that movement is good for us. So moving is great, even if it's uncomfortable sometimes. But then, on a emotional and a social level, I think it's prime time to start going ahead and figuring out who in our lives we can trust, creating those networks of people that are going to be there for us through the long haul, and just start building into those, because it's the perfect time to do so. And, the relationships that we would continue to have with them after the baby is born, I think is, we couldn't trade them, and so it's the perfect time to start doing that.
Yeah. I love that. Just reiterating the community aspect of pregnancy and, And
I keep saying friends. That's not exclusive to friends. I think that we have family too sometimes, but not everyone has family, and nor is everyone's family healthy.
Yeah.
And so if you have healthy family, then pulling those people in, I think that's a major resource that you can utilize.
Yeah.
But I just say friends as an overarching term, because anybody can be friends.
Yeah.
And so.
No, I love that explanation too, because your family can be your friends if you have healthy relationships with them too.
Yes.
So that's great. Thank you for clarifying. So for those who do decide to carry to term and to parent their children, it's no secret that the newborn stage can be really tough and really isolating. So how can moms build connections during the newborn stage as they're transitioning to motherhood?
I would say, number one, adjust your expectations. It's going to take a little while to be back out at dinner, in the evenings, and feeling like you can have solid adult connections where you're not yawning all the time. So I would say, first and foremost, just adjust your expectations. Things are going to be very different for a while. And, honestly, this is just kind of a little bit of personal story.
Yeah.
But we were married for 8 years before we had our first child. And I don't know what I was thinking, to be honest. I think I just had the assumption that we were pretty flexible. She would be pretty flexible, so that she would just fit right in with our regular routine. I don't even know what I was thinking. And we had her, and she did not sleep well, I would say, the first year of life. And those first few weeks coming home from the hospital, I was in tears all the time. I think I would go take a shower and just cry.
Yeah.
And I was breastfeeding, and so my husband, there was only so much that he could do, because he, I wasn't really pumping at that point. Just home from the hospital.
Yeah.
I wasn't pumping or anything, and so I just felt like he didn't know what else he could do, and I was like, I have to be with her all the time.
Yeah.
And it was a pressure I had never felt before. So looking back on this, we were actually telling our small group this story not long ago. And my husband was like, I think that you may have had a little postpartum. I was like, I absolutely know I did, looking back now. Or anxiety for that matter. But so we were telling our small group that not too long ago. And it was just nice looking back and, realizing, hey, I struggle like most people do, after having a baby. And so if I had known going in to adjust my expectations, I think I probably could have handled things a lot differently, or even have expected things to be different. So accepting help from my mom, expecting more help from my husband, and allowing him to, take a shift while I go to bed, pumping ahead of time, like sleeping while they sleep. I mean, there are so many things I could have done differently to probably prevent, things that did happen. And when I had my second and third child, which you can still experience many of those things, it made it a little bit easier just because I already knew what to expect at that point. So I think adjusting our expectations is huge. Finding out from other people what they went through can be important, because you can kind of recognize some areas, looking ahead, that you might need to change things. So social situations, I think that is just going to take some time getting used to interruptions and recognizing you need more rest during this time. And keeping in mind that you are never going to be beneficial to your child if you are not like taking care of yourself. And so resting when they rest, even if that means calling in your mom or calling in a sibling, or, utilizing a friend and saying, hey, I need a nap. Would you mind just coming to sit and I'll have some bottles, And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
All of that's okay. Going to bed earlier, all of those things are okay. Date nights might look completely different. Time out with friends. There may not be time out with friends initially, like that's the reality of it. So, adjusting your expectations, I think, is big. And then I will also say another thing is remembering not to compare yourself to other people. I think that we have a really bad tendency to utilize social media as like our guideline for parenting or who we're supposed to be. And the reality is that's not real.
Yeah.
And so if you have in your head that I'm not good enough, or I'm not like that person, or, all these other moms are doing this and I can't keep it together, like all of those things are not true.
Yeah.
None of that's true. And so just recognizing the journey that you're on is going to be completely different from someone else's. You're going to parent in a different way. Your needs are going to be different than somebody else's. Your child is going to be different, from someone else's. And so, just coming to terms with the fact that your journey is your own and you can't compare yourself to someone else.
That is so good. Like releasing those expectations that we have of ourselves, and then addressing where we get those expectations from, which often is social media. Sometimes it can come from just an expectation we have of ourselves. But I'm sure that is like a huge weight off your shoulders if you are able to step back and say, what's actually true? Okay, I'm a unique person. This is my current situation. It's unique to me. This is my son or daughter. They're their own unique person. So I think that will be so helpful for moms, hopefully trying to take a little bit of the burden off of themselves in the postpartum stage. And then on that same note, what resources are there available for moms who are experiencing or just in the postpartum stage in general, whatever that looks like for them?
I would say, there's multiple resources. I would say number one, the child's pediatrician is a big avenue to utilize. Ask them any questions you have about your own child, about like how to do things, how to parent, how to feed, how to breastfeed. There are so many things that we can, utilize pediatricians for. And they have resources at those offices as well. Utilizing your own doctor. And so, and two, I just want to say, when most people experience loneliness on some level, but when you're a mom, it's only amplified, especially in those newborn stages. But then on top of that, I think that, it's not that I think, I know that loneliness is sometimes, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say it's a precursor to, because it's not necessarily a precursor, but it's a strong predictor. That's the word I'm looking for for postpartum depression. And so just remembering that if after the baby comes, and it could be sometimes up to 6 months after you have your baby, you start feeling, those, baby blues, or feeling disconnected even more, feeling sad all the time, feeling extreme anxiety, feeling like you don't want to get out of bed. Like, let your doctor know, because those are things that you need to be aware of, and it doesn't make you a bad mom.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty common. And so not only letting them know, but then equipping you with the resources to be able to take care of yourself, I think is very important. In the same way you would, reach out to a professional if you were having migraines all the time, or if you were having, heart problems or anything. The symptoms that you're facing at those points need to be addressed from a medical standpoint. And then I would also say there's a website called postpartum.net, and you can search by your state and see what all the resources are in your state that they offer, anything from individual counseling to group counseling to just other local resources, support groups, and play dates are great too. I think there's a lot of funny things that can come out of play dates, and just the stigma of moms getting together with kids all over the place. But there is something very refreshing about it. And even if those people are not initially best friends, you're going to a play date and you're forcing it because you feel like you need those social connections. You're exhausted. Maybe you do, maybe you don't want to be there. But I think that there is something very good about it, because you're in community with other moms who are dealing with the same things you are. And so there's lots of resources to utilize.
Yeah, that was awesome. There were so many things that you said that I feel like removed some of the shame from seeking help postpartum, or just putting yourself out there again. Hey, it doesn't make you a bad mom if you're seeking out help. It actually makes you really strong, trying to get those resources for yourself. And you mentioned it's just like treating a migraine. You would call your doctor if you're having migraine symptoms, that there's no shame or difference in seeking help for postpartum care. And then also just being honest about, you may not want to be there when you go to that play date, but it can be so helpful for you in the long run. So I think that I don't know. I again just hope that moms are oh, this is so good, so refreshing, because it's true. All of this is real life stuff, and I think it's awesome that you are offering these resources to women and giving them these connections. So there's a question that I like to ask everyone that we have on the podcast, just because a lot of the women we have on here serve women in some capacity or another. So what is your why for doing what you do in counseling for women?
Ooh. I think that my why has been, developing over the past few years. But I would say that currently my why is because I want to create healthy women to then create healthy families. And I think my why is because I have seen the importance of that in growing my own family. Because everything that we as mothers do has an impact. And so I tell my clients all the time, you're modeling, in front of your children all the time. And so that's my why. I want these women to recognize the role that they have in creating these children and growing them into how God wants us to be. And so, I think that's probably my why, my biggest why.
Yeah. I love that, the personal experience of watching it happen for yourself and then getting to turn around and help other women do that. I think that's a really beautiful way to bring people along for the journey and just kind of be like, hey, follow me as I'm doing this. Yes. And here's what I've learned, and here are all the ways that I maybe wouldn't do this again. But so I think that that's really encouraging. So just to end us off, I would love to know if there's any words that you want to leave our listeners with, or just any encouragement you have for moms in the pregnancy and postpartum stages. I
would just like to maybe just even encourage the women listening, because I think that with pregnancies in general, planned or unplanned, there's a lot of fear that can come with having a baby. And just maybe giving yourself time for the shock to wear off and allowing this acceptance that you this situation could be a gift, and it could be one of the greatest gifts that you're ever given. And so allowing it to change you for the better, I think is a beautiful thing. And so maybe just that word of encouragement that, to, I guess, own the stage of life that you're in and learn that beauty can happen from it. And it may not be exactly the way you planned it or your timing or anything. It may not even be in your plan, but it can be a beautiful thing. And so, just that little bit of encouragement.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Jessica. It's been so nice to have you.
Thank you.